A Maine Superior Court judge just made a really important ruling that'll affect the future of absentee voting here in Maine. About a month ago, I told you about a referendum that'll be on our ballots here in Maine this fall that would make it much harder for Maine voters to cast a ballot by absentee and require all voters to present certain kinds of photo ID when they vote. Maine State Representative Laurel Libby, as well as Washington Republicans, are pushing for these changes. Maine Secretary of State Shenna Bellows drafted the language for the referendum, and I'll put that up here. But Libby and Republicans felt that the way it was written didn't fairly represent their core intent of the ballot initiative. So Libby's group filed a lawsuit against Bellows and accused her of trying to confuse voters by leading with the cuts to absentee voting instead of leading with the requirement for photo ID. On Friday, a Maine Superior Court judge ruled against Libby, saying that the way the ballot question was written was, quote, understandable and not misleading. No ballot question could practically identify every one of the 27 changes to Maine's election laws proposed by the initiative. Why is this such a big deal? Because 40% of Maine voters voted absentee in the last election, and this referendum would effectively dismantle that entire system. We're talking about rural voters, voters with disabilities, seniors, and people who work multiple jobs. They're the ones who use absentee balloting the most. What Representative Libby knows and why she sued is because she knows that if the absentee voting language was buried in the ballot question, it would have a much greater chance of passing. So by keeping the impact on absentee voting unburied, the Superior Court has delivered an enormous win for the Mainers who vote absentee, which I'll remind you was 40% in the last election.